The commercial media world of Vermont is a mix of small companies and independent operators. They work in niche markets, providing expertise to local clients.
We're all kind of like each other. We want to be independent. We want to be small. We want to have our hands on every aspect of a client's issue. You know, we don't want to be just a little piece of that whole chain.
Burlington was a great small city, that could support a business, and yet wasn't completely built out.
I have such an amazing array of clients, and that's seriously what I love about this business. The ones that are in Vermont, I've met almost all of them at some point face to face, because Vermont is small enough that you do get to meet the people you do business with.
Media producers and creators in Vermont rely on making connections with clients and the local business community. Their survival depends on their ability to brand themselves and to adapt. This story is about three of these professionals: a multimedia specialist, a filmmaker, and a voice talent, and how they strive to be indispensable. Mary Catherine Jones is the primary voice talent and owner of VoiceOver Vermont. Her company does audio production work for a wide range of local and national clients. Jones has built her brand over 7 years doing voiceover work for e-learning, commercials, and audiobooks. Most of that work is done in a studio at her home.
There's really been a revolution in the last 20 years or so in the voiceover industry. It used to be that voice talent was called into studios, and they would go into studios, they would read their lines, and then they would go home. But today, most voice talent is expected to have a quality studio in their home, and to be able not only to voice the takes, but then to actually do the post-production on that. One of the challenges is that is something now that a lot of different people can do, but the opportunity is that not very many people can do it well and with high quality.
It's 6 a.m., clear as a bell and winter quiet. I'm watching my breath turn to steam. If I turn left out of the driveway, there's a pile of paperwork on my desk at work.
I didn't even have a laptop computer. I went out and I bought a shotgun mic, and that's because I knew for the space I was recording in at the time, I needed to have something that was going to be very, very focused and not pick up on room sounds and not pick up on road noise, so I got a shotgun mic. I ended up rigging curtain tracking to my ceiling, and picture a hospital exam room, and so I put sound curtains on that, and I was able to close that off. It was not optimal though, because I found that in that particular setup that room tones change. And so recording in the morning would be different than recording in the afternoon. If I wanted to get into longer projects like e-learning, which was ultimately my goal, I knew I was going to have a much more sound consistent environment. So fast forward to about 4 years ago, we did a house renovation project, and part of that, we blew out what was an existing closet, made it about twice as big, put a door on it with a window, and then in front of that had some curtains, and then lined the entire thing with carpeting, and of course the floor as well, put some sound stuff on the ceiling and acoustic foam on the walls, and now I have a studio that sounds the same at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a winter's day as it does at 4 o'clock in the morning. With my current studio setup and the software that I use to edit and record and all of that, I absolutely can produce A-level commercial quality audio.
And carry that with you throughout the year. And now, for the last time.
How she sounds is all important. Jones works at maintaining the quality of her voice.
Well, a voiceover talent, the reason that they're hired is because they are, for all intents and purposes, the voice of that company or that product, that brand. And so I actually think that there's a tremendous responsibility to make sure that my voice is in good shape, that I sound appealing and engaging. So before I do any recording, really regardless of time of day, I have to do a consistent set of vocal warm-ups, and that usually takes me about 20 minutes or so. I do a sort of quick aerobic routine to really get the blood and circulation moving, and then some very funny sounding noises that upset my animals when I do them, but what that does is it really warms up my throat, it warms up my lips, and it helps me to be able to narrate for longer periods of time.
Voiceover work is not just about speaking words. Companies and clients often want something very specific. Jones loves what she does, but says the life of a freelance voiceover artist isn't easy. She had to build up a reputation to get work.
Oftentimes people will say, oh, I've been told I have a great voice. I should, maybe I should do voiceover. And I always say, you could certainly try your hand at voiceover. There's nothing stopping you, except it's very similar to being a pretty decent actor. You can be great, but if you don't have the discipline to work at it every single day, to audition all the time, and to basically build up your network, voiceover work is about 10% talent and 90% marketing, and that's just the truth of the business.
There's a saying out there, and you've probably heard it. It's, to a man with a hammer, every problem is a nail. Well, if that's all you're carrying around is a hammer, if you need a screwdriver, you're going to use the hammer because that's all you've got. We try to avoid that idea strenuously. We try to talk to a client and say, okay, here are your set of issues the way we see them. Let us do some research on how to solve them. Then we bring the tools in later.
25 years ago, Matt Dugan founded Shadow Productions in Burlington, a multimedia firm that produces commercial radio ads and promotional videos for diverse clients. It's a small shop of 4 full-time staff members and a few part-time and freelance operators. With these resources, Shadow uses a range of tools to communicate messages for their clients. For Dugan, the message is just as important as the medium.
In the old days, it was mostly radio and soundtracks and original music and so on and so forth. The market changed and evolved. Equipment became less expensive. Things became very possible with software packages that weren't before. So we got into animation and multimedia. And now we're a classic, well, if there's such a thing, a classic multimedia production company. We do research and we do consultation and we solve people's businesses' problems, help them achieve their goals.
Matt Dugan is in his element, working with clients' problems. He takes on multiple roles in the production process.
I'm a writer, I'm an executive producer, I'm a strategy and research type of person. I'm basically in charge of seeing projects through from start to finish, making sure that the client's needs, from how they first state them to the way we address them to the outcome, making sure that's a process that works for them. We writers are supposed to be completely solitary, and that's certainly part of my personality. That's what I've always been since birth. Okay, well, what do you want to do with that as you grow up? What are you going to do with that as a career? And it turned out that I really enjoy helping businesses solve problems and reach goals.
The main problem, Dugan says, is that clients sometimes don't know what they want.
So many times they walk in and they think they have one issue or one problem or one goal, and it's actually really another. And so the question is whether the client wants to work with you hand in hand to solve that. The final product is always at least a little bit different, sometimes dramatically different from what they thought they were asking for. Because a lot of the times they just don't know what's possible, or they haven't thought it through in terms of time frame or budget. And so that's one of the things that actually makes this business really interesting, figuring out how to help clients define their problems. And then within those ever-present constraints of time and budget, helping them solve those problems.
Dugan doesn't just worry about the client. In his experience, the consumer can be just as hard to reach.
The biggest challenge with today's consumer is that they're so busy and they're so bombarded by messages. And so our clients need to talk to those people despite all of that. And I think that's the same whether you're here or you're in the big city or anywhere. If someone's got a smartphone, they're spending an inordinate amount of time looking at it and they're not paying attention to you. So people's attention spans are really short. It's definitely changed how you have to come up with messaging and how you reach people.
Someone once said that you walk into a room and you have 3 minutes to make 500 decisions, and then you have to live with those decisions for the rest of the interview.
Vince Frankie is a one-man operation. He is both the owner of and the primary videographer for Peregrine Productions, a company that makes nature documentaries and cultural pieces.
I guess my first hint of video was I was working on a burrowing owl project in California, and I just borrowed my dad's camcorder just as an experiment and started making some quick shots. And we were working with a really charismatic burrowing owl, so they're 8 inches tall. When they have 6 chicks, they're all wedged into the burrow. So it made for really good visuals easily. So it was a easy start for me. But just in putting this thing together, I was literally cutting it from one VCR to another VCR, so it's a very low production value. But just in showing a few friends, I talked about the owls, but I talked about some of the management concerns. And I just realized this is really, they had no exposures to this before. It allowed me to create a story and bridge the gap between some environmental issues and the public. And so I really realized that video is a great tool for educating people. And that's really what got me into video production and made me pursue it and made me want to get better.
Since starting Peregrine Productions in 1999, Vince Frankie has been striving to get better. And the best way to do that, he says, is to learn from your mistakes.
Being able to do both the shooting and the editing on every project, as I'm editing, I realize, I really needed to keep this shot going for 2 more seconds. This is the follow-up question I wish I would have asked. And so it's a really quick feedback loop, because you learn that lesson in the edit suite. The next day you're on another shoot, and so you make sure you get those things. Both sides really feed each other, and so as soon as you get something done, you're editing it and you're learning those lessons, but there's always the next step to improve. So I think having both of those perspectives helped me pick things up quickly. If I was asked to give any advice to filmmakers, I'd say just start making productions. Really go through the process. You've got to learn.
Frankie has decided to stay in Vermont and to stay small. Elsewhere, the money might be better, but here he can focus on what he loves to produce.
And my path would have been completely different, had I worked in the city. You get exposed to so much more, and you probably would only get to do one thing, whether you're doing lighting or camera work or editing. But no, that's a whole different world. You can definitely get into little niches around here, and that's what people told me early on, was find your niche and really develop it. Find what you love to do and keep doing that, and you're going to convince people that you're the person to do these types of projects, and hopefully you haven't picked too small of a niche.
The world of media production in Vermont is all about small production companies building their niches and serving clients with a personal connection. These companies serve different purposes and had different origins, but they all share one thing in common. They stayed in Vermont. It's a trade-off, but it's something they've all accepted.
Vermont's a huge compromise. I want to say that to everybody out there. We all work too hard. We all don't make enough money. And the bright side is you can do such awesome things in this state with your free time. And I did not ever categorically rule out living in another city again. I just thought that next phase would be living somewhere like this.
Some days I'll go home and it's just the day was a blur, because you were doing so many things. And it's a great field to be in, because you not only get to learn about your trade and improve on those skills, but you get to learn about the subject matter that you're working on, and it's interesting.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. There are so many resources online that you can access. There are forums, there are places you can go to say, help, I don't know what I'm doing, and there are people who will answer your questions. Don't be afraid to ask. You'll find that this is a community that is extremely generous.